Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for taking an interest in learning about redistricting software. In the last redistricting cycle following the 2010 census, the combination of inexpensive computing, powerful mapping software, and big data on political demographics placed great power in the hands of our elected leaders to draw maps that were minutely gerrymandered right down to the block level. In the upcoming redistricting cycle, that kind of computing power will be in our hands. We have the tools to oversee what our leaders draw in the next round of district mapping. In this video, we're going to look at two GIS, Geographic Information System applications, DISTRICTR and DAVE'S Redistricting, that are available as online freeware that we can use to draw our own maps and analyze the maps that our legislators draw. First, though, here's an important resource for Texas residents to know about. Our state legislature draws the boundaries of U.S. congressional districts, state House and Senate districts, and state Board of Education districts. You can find all of those maps, including interim plans, by opening up your browser and entering the District Viewer website in the URL window, dvr.capital, capital spelled TOL, .texas.gov. Here you'll see headings for each of the four government bodies that the Texas legislature draws districts. Click on any one, and it will open up links to all of the plans considered by the legislature and by the courts during the last litigation process. There's a single link for all plans. And there are links to various categories, such as plans considered by the Senate and House redistricting committees, plans considered by the full House and Senate, even plans submitted by private citizens and citizen groups. Most importantly, there will always be a link to the one plan that shows our current districts. This is true for the congressional, state Senate and House, and Board of Education districts. You can open up that link to see the map, and you can zoom in to see the close, street-level details for any of these maps. When our elected leaders draw their new maps in the next redistricting cycle, we can reproduce them and analyze the demographics using the tools that we're going to look at in this tutorial. Let's start with DISTRICTR. Go to your browser's URL window and enter districtr.org. That's districtr, one word, .org. And you'll land on the DISTRICTR homepage. Scroll down half the page until you see the United States map. You can click on any state to begin. But first, notice the option just below the map to upload an existing map file in JSON format. This'll come in handy if you draw your own map, then save it to your computer and return to work on it later. Now let's click on Texas. This will take you to the page where you can launch your own drawing from scratch. At the top of the page, you can select Draw Districts, or you can select Draw Communities of Interest. Under Districts, you can choose Statewide Districts, where you'll see three options: Draw U.S. Congressional Districts, Texas State Senate Districts, or Texas State House Districts, using voting precincts as building blocks. The default number of districts in each plan is our current allocation. For instance, Texas had 36 congressional districts after the 2010 census, so that'll be built into the plan. However, we do have the option to override that by selecting the Customize button to the right of the blue buttons. Here we can change the number of districts, then click on the blue field to start drawing our map. But let's go back to our start page. Click on Customize again to look at our other options. Under Counties, you can draw commissioner districts for 3 counties, Fort Bend, Tarrant, or Harris counties, out of neighborhood blocks. Under Cities, you only have options to draw council districts for Austin or Fort Worth. And again, you can use the Customize button to change the number of council districts. There is a mistake, though. Both of these say you can build the districts out of block groups, but only the Austin map is broken down into neighborhood blocks. We can click on it and zoom down to see the individual blocks. But the Fort Worth map is only broken down by precincts. Detailed block data isn't loaded into this map. We'll talk later about drawing communities of interest, But let's start drawing a district map and look at the features in DISTRICTR. Let's pick a statewide map and select the 36 congressional districts. This opens up a blank map of the entire state. There are zoom in and zoom out buttons at the upper left of the map. Let's zoom into DFW. We can use our cursor to grab the map and center it. Just click and drag. Before we start drawing districts, let's look at some demographic features of DISTRICTR. In the right-hand sidebar, there are 3 tabs labeled Population, Data Layers, and Evaluation. Under Population, you'll see the target of 698,488 residents for each of the 36 districts based on a total state population of 25,145,561 per the 2010 census. Now let's select the Data Layers tab and check the box next to Show County Boundaries. That'll make it easier for us to distinguish the counties in the DFW area. Next, under Race Demographics, check Show Population. This shows us the population density as shaded areas for each precinct. The darker the precinct, the greater the population. Now, instead of total population under the variable window, we can select ethnic minorities. Let's choose Hispanic. This shows precincts where the highest concentration of Hispanic residents are located. Instead of shaded areas, we can alternatively display this demographic information as circles. Here, each circle represents a voting precinct. The circle size is proportional to the total number of residents in a precinct. The darker the circle, the higher the density of Hispanic voters. Instead of Hispanic residents as our demographics display variable, we can select Black residents to see where they live, or we could select other races, or white non-Hispanic population. We can display the same demographics for voting age population instead of total population by checking the same choices below. In addition to ethnic or racial demographics, we can display the political party favored in each precinct. Check the box by Show Partisan Lean, and we see predominantly Democratic areas in blue, predominantly Republican areas in red. Again, we can display these as precinct circles. And we have our choice of which election to use. You can see partisan lean based on results of the 2012 or 2016 presidential elections, or off-year election results. These are powerful tools that allow us to see how our political parties and minority residents are packed and cracked into their districts. Now we're ready to start drawing a district. First, let's uncheck the demographic boxes because our districts are going to have their own colors. Above the tabs in the right sidebar, you'll see the mapping toolbox. The hand icon, which is the default mode when we first fire up the application, lets us grab the map with our cursor, as we've already seen, and move it around to reposition it. The paintbrush icon lets us start coloring in precincts to build our first district. There's a palette of 36 colors, one for each of the U.S. congressional districts. Let's draw our own version of Congressional District 6, which currently encompasses Arlington and neighboring Ellis and Navarro counties. Our District 6 is just going to include the cities of Arlington and Grand Prairie. The first color, a light blue, is highlighted, and we could start with that, or we could select the sixth color in our palette, a darker royal blue, to keep the same district number. Let's do that, and then reduce our brush size using the slide bar so that we can color in single precincts. We'll start at the bottom of Tarrant County and click on precincts from Rendon to Mansfield. You can hold your cursor down and paint the districts like a brush. Notice that as we color in the district, the population table on the right is getting filled in. That will tell us when we've reached our target population of 698,488. We won't be able to get exactly to that number because the software won't allow us to break up these precincts, but we can come close. Let's fill in from Kennedale to Lake Arlington and to the eastern edge of Tarrant County. That'll get us to 500,000 residents. Then let's add in parts of Grand Prairie between Joe Pool Lake and Mountain Creek Lake. If we go too far geographically or exceed our target population, we can select the eraser icon to remove precincts we don't want to include. When we've reached our target population, we can click the hand icon so we don't accidentally keep drawing on our district. Now go to the Data Layers tab and click Show District Numbers. A number 6 appears on our district. We can choose the Evaluation tab and see the demographic makeup of our district. You can see that our district is 39% white, 31% Hispanic, and 23% black. We can also select other races in the Compare window and see the number is 7%. This would be considered a minority opportunity district. Scroll down and we can display the ethnic demographics by voting age population. Scroll to the bottom and you can see the partisan split in the district. 55% Democratic to 45% Republican. That's a borderline competitive district. It's not packed to be safe for one party, and it gives all voters a fair chance to elect a candidate of the entire district's choice. We can gauge the partisan balance against different elections. For instance, using the 2012 presidential election instead of 2016, we can see the partisan edge was a little tighter, 52% to 48%. If you want to save this plan and come back to it later, you can click on the 3 lines at the upper right. You have 2 options to export the plan to a GIS format. The first option is to a JSON file. That stands for JavaScript Object Notation and uses .json as the file suffix. That's the file format we saw underneath the US map on the home page. The other export option is a shapefile, which uses .shp as the file name extension. That format uses primitive geometric shapes to represent geographical data, but the save function doesn't seem to be currently working. We can also save the file as a comma delimited CSV, but that won't do us much good in this program if we want to upload and work on it later. It is possible to submit a .csv file to the Texas legislature, which we'll show later. There's also a share button in the toolbox that will give you a URL for this plan, which you should be able to share with others in real time so that they can see your map. As you make changes to it, the Save button becomes an Update button that you can use to save your changes for others to see. Before we move away from DISTRICTR, let's take a quick look at the Community Mapper. This feature allows you to define a community of interest that you can submit as input to a legislative or municipal redistricting authority. We'll go back to the home page, click on our state, and instead of drawing districts, we'll select Draw Communities. Let's pick the city of Fort Worth. We can zoom in to see neighborhoods in fine detail, right down to streets and buildings. The database doesn't have neighborhood block data. We still have to use precincts as building blocks. But this mapper lets us define a community of interest. In the right sidebar, give your community a name and a description. You can write down what unites this community, who lives there, and what important landmarks or traditions it has. You can even mark important landmarks and locations using the pin icon under Important Places. When you're finished drawing that community, you can add another by clicking on the plus sign at the upper right. When you're done, save your work to the hard drive as before. Now, let's have a look at DAVE'S redistricting. DAVE'S has many of the same capabilities as DISTRICTR, but it has more analytics and a larger demographics database. In your browser's URL window, type DAVE'S redistricting, one word, .org. That takes you directly to the map on the site's homepage. On your first visit, click the Sign Up box at the upper right of the white header bar. To use DAVE'S, you'll need to create a user identity and password. Any work that you do on the site will be automatically saved to your unique workspace so that you can return to work on it in future sessions. Just enter your email address and a password to create your identity for future logins. Once you're signed in, you can choose a state on the map or click the Pick a State button in the left sidebar. That will take you to portals for the current congressional and state legislative maps. Beneath those, you'll also find a selection of custom maps, optimized for district features like compactness or best minority representation. We'll talk more about these analytics later. For now, let's select the Maps icon in the header toolbar. That takes you to the My Maps page. If you're a returning user, it'll display a list of maps you've previously created. Let's select New Map at the upper right. You'll be asked to give your map a name and choose a state from the drop-down list. Once you pick your state, you'll see an option to choose either the 2010 or 2020 voting precinct shapes. 2010 refers to the precincts that were current in 2010, but originally based on results of the 2000 census. 2010 precinct shapes will conform with districts that were redrawn in 2001. The 2020 shapes refer to our current precincts, which conform with districts that were redrawn following the 2010 census. Once you've chosen a voting precinct set, next choose the plan type: U.S. Congressional, State Senate, State House, or Other. In this example, we're selecting Texas, 2020 precincts, and U.S. Congress. The program will automatically load population data from the latest available source. Since the 2020 census results haven't been reported yet, the population data is based on the latest estimates from the Census Bureau's 2018 American Community Survey. That estimate projects 39 seats in the Texas congressional delegation. You'll recall that when we used DISTRICTR, our only option was to use the 2010 census data. To recreate the same map, go to Data Selector in the right sidebar, and under Primary Data Sets, select the total population in 2010 next to Census, then change the district count to 36. The target population for each district is 698,477. Now click the Apply button, and we're ready to start mapping. We can zoom in and out using the plus and minus buttons located in the upper left corner of the map and reposition the map with our cursor, just as we did in DISTRICTR. Let's recreate Congressional District 6 just as it was drawn using the 2010 census data and the precincts that were redrawn in 2011, which is what we've loaded in. Select the District 6 radio button in the left sidebar, then the paintbrush icon in the upper left of the map, and let's start coloring in. We'll speed up the coloring of precincts in Ellis and Navarro counties to the southeast, then fill in Tarrant County. Observe that as we add precincts to the district, the population column in the left sidebar starts to fill up. To make the county lines easier to see, let's select the county lines from the Overlays section in the lower left sidebar. When we're done, we can lock in District 6 so that we don't accidentally add or remove a precinct while we're coloring the next district over. We can zoom in and add a background overlay map so that we see a GIS map showing the city streets and other major landmarks. In the upper right toolbar, there are 3 buttons labeled Statistics, Analytics, and Advanced. Let's try Show District Statistics. This shows us a table of the district demographics. For each district that you've drawn, you'll see population, percentage of Democrats and Republicans, and racial ethnic backgrounds for white non-Hispanic and overall minority population, plus detailed percentages for Hispanic, Black, Asian, Native American, and Pacific Islander voting age population. We can return to our map by selecting the Show Map button next to the Statistics button. From here, we can select population and demographic data different from what was displayed in the statistics table. Click on the gear button in the upper right corner, and under Data Selector, you can change the census population from 2010 to 2018. You can select 2010 or 2018 voting age demographics. You can also select partisan demographics from among recent presidential or off-year election results. All of those choices will be reflected in the statistical table we just saw. Under the Map Settings drop-down, we can actually rename our map or change our plan from congressional to something else, like State Senate. If we do that, we'll need to manually override the number of districts. Let's cancel that and go back to the map we drew. Clicking the Analytics button in the upper right, we can see our map's rating for various fairness criteria. Right now, this map doesn't score too well because it only has one district filled in. Those scores are more meaningful when the entire state map is filled in. To see how that works, let's open up the analytics for our current congressional districts using the latest population data from the 2018 American Community Survey. The first thing we see is a radar chart that displays 5 measures of fairness: compactness, minority representation, partisan competitiveness, proportionality or party representation across the state, and splitting of districts across county lines. The bigger the number, the better the rating. You can see right away that our current congressional districts score highly for minority representation and proportion of Democrats to Republicans, comparing overall population to the number of seats in the Texas congressional delegation. On the other hand, our districts score poorly on compactness and splitting across county lines, and they score very badly for competitiveness. These districts were explicitly drawn to be safe for incumbents. If you scroll down the page, you'll see more detailed analysis of these metrics. You can drill down and study these on your own. Finally, there's the Advanced button in the upper right. This is for serious map wonks. We won't say much about this other than it has some highly technical tools. The rank votes graph, for example, plots the election results for each district, specifically the percentage share of the Democratic vote in ranked ascending order. The lowest Democratic share was District 13 with 16% Democratic votes. All the districts that voted with fewer than 50% Democratic vote share went Republican, as denoted by the red dots. Districts with greater than 50% share Democratic swung Democrat and are denoted by blue dots. The beige area, from 45% to 55%, is the region where seats are considered competitive. You can see that all the districts lie outside that range. The Advanced tab has other metrics like the seats vote curve, measures of bias such as efficiency gap, and compactness tests. You can learn more about these tools by clicking on the Information button in the upper right-hand corner. Like DISTRICTR, DAVE'S has a share function that creates a URL link to this map, which you can share with anyone. You can even allow others to edit the map if you're working collaboratively. And while DAVE'S keeps all your maps in your own workspace, you also have the option to save your work as an exported file. Select the arrow in the main header bar, and you'll see a pop-up window that gives you several export options. You can save the map as a CSV, as a JSON file, a portable network graphics image file of your map, or a reimportable JSON archive file. Another useful feature in DAVE'S redistricting is a search function to help us find unassigned or stray precincts or identify non-contiguous districts. Let's open up a completed map to show how it works. This is the legislature's proposed map of Texas appeals court districts, but we've left some precincts unpainted that aren't immediately visible. Open up the statistics, and you'll see them flagged as unassigned under the table. To find them, go back to the map and click on the search bar near the top. This will zoom into a close-up of the blank precincts. Just unlock the palette and paint in each one until our map is complete. Both programs, DISTRICTR and DAVE'S Redistricting, are user-friendly, and the developers are continually adding new features and capabilities. DISTRICTR has map refinement at the neighborhood block level in just a few communities. DAVE'S uses strictly precincts as building blocks. Neither application allows for precinct splitting. Until recently, the date of this video being in the spring of 2021, DAVE'S had only the old Texas 2010 precinct shapes in its database. DISTRICTR has just the current precinct shapes. And as we've seen in this tutorial, DAVE'S does have more analytical tools than DISTRICTR. The Texas legislature's House and Senate redistricting committees use Red Apple, a program developed and maintained by the Texas Legislative Council. In the last redistricting cycle, the legislature granted access to Red Apple on public workstations located in the Capitol building to individuals and groups by written request. However, it also accepts map files in .text and .csv format as input. For citizens who can't easily get down to Austin or gain special access to the state's official software, do-it-yourself applications like DISTRICTR and DAVE'S Redistricting will be an empowering and democratizing force in the upcoming cycle. Learn these tools. Follow what your legislators and their staff are doing in their maps. Find out how these maps are affecting your communities. Let them know we're watching.